Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today, Zevachim daf Chav Daled. We're going to begin on Chav Daled Amud Aleph, the third line from the top. Oimid al gabi kalim, al gabi behema, al gabi ragli chaveru apostle. So when it comes to doing the avoda, as we saw in the Mishnah almost 10 blot ago on daf Tezvav, so it talked about certain things that were done improperly, that the din is that the avoda is not kosher. So one of them has to do with the Kohanim, who of course don't wear shoes or socks, that their feet must be mamish on the ground. And therefore, if they have their feet instead on top of a kli or an animal or on someone else's foot for that matter, it's also possible. So no. The Tana de Rabbi Shmuel Hoyel so we know that the floor has an element of sanctity, because, for example, it says la'amoid l'sharis, it to be standing, and Rashi says shahari David kidsha b'shtei toidais uvashir shel pigoyim. So it was brought in the time of David HaMelech, a whole ceremony in order to be able to be mekadosh these things, to sanctify them, namely the floor, as well as the klisharis, as the pasuk says, Rashi quoting it, v'im shachem v'kadosh haisam, that obviously we anointed it with Shemen HaMishcha. So the din is, ma klisharis, lo yehei davar chayitzeitz, bein levein klisharis. Let's say, for example, as Rashi says in the Kabbalah's Dam, that when the Dam goes into the klisharis, as the pasuk says, "Lakach hakayin," that the kohen will take it. So we learn out from there that he has to be the one that takes it, and it has to be that it goes directly into the kli without any chatzitza. So the ritzba also, there cannot be any chatzitza. So one of the things that's also discussed is if, let's say, he's has a kerchief or something wrapped around his hands. No, he has to be mamish touching the kli, and also there can't be anything else in the kli. The dam has to be mamish touching the kli. So too when it comes to the floor, there cannot be any separation, right? So that's what we learn out. So let's see this again. Ma klisharis lehe davar chaytzes bein levein klisharis. Av ritzba lehe davar chaytzes bein levein haritzba. Fine. Utsricha. The question is, why do we need to have these three examples in our Mishnah? Just say you have to be on the floor. Because diashmi inan kli mishom dula mina de basininu. Because it's an inanimate object. So you are touching that of the flesh. So even though it's basar, but it's not a person. So maybe that's why. You would think that's different when it comes to a person, because it's like the same thing. It's my hand, it's your hand. In fact, there's an interesting halacha that when it comes to saying a bracha, you can't put your hand over your head if you're not wearing a kippah, but I could put my hand on someone else's head, right? So on some level, we see that your hand has some capacity with this basar. Or you could say, pumfa kert. The whole point of that din is to tell you the opposite, actually. It's come to tell you that there's a difference between me and you. So therefore, so too, even if my foot is on top of your foot, that's chatzitza. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, the ragloi achas ala kli. Let's say you have 1 foot on a kli. Raglo achas al haritzba. One's actually on the floor. Or raglo achas al even. You have a foot on the stone. Raglo achas al haritzba. So at least you do have 1 foot on the floor. So is that good enough? So Ryan, we evaluate the whole situation. Kosh ili natal hakli. If we remove the kli, vitin natal even or the stone, and yachal amano ragla achas, sounds like Hillel, you can stand on 1 foot. V'yavoid avadasa, and you can still do your voda ksher v'imav avadasa psula. So it's all totally if how much weight you're putting on that other leg. So otherwise, it would be a problem. Okay, boy Rabami. So now Rabami posed a question. Nidlid da, let's say that word again. Nidaldala ha'even v'amad aleha mahu. Let's say there's a a stone which is dislodged or shaky one of the stones is not so well put into the ground of the Beis Hamikdash. So Mao. So Heicha de Ein Daito L'Chabra. Let's say there's no intention to reattach this stone. Well, to Boylich Devadichat Chaitzi. Then it's definitely a problem. But hopefully that's not the case. Kiti Boylich de Daito L'Chabra. Really, your intention is to fix the stone eventually. My Kivan de Daito L'Chabra. Since you're going to fix it anyway, come on, Mechaber Dami. It's like, right, like, oh, don't worry, I'm going to get around to it, right? So maybe it's Ke'ilah, like it's already fixed. So Dilma Hashdamia Ha Talisha. It's detached and it's a chatzitza. So that's the question. So Rabba Zuti Boyle Hachi. Boy Rami Ami, he asks like this. Nekra Evan, let's say that the stone was actually totally removed. V'amad mimkaimi, your mom is standing in its crevice, mahu. So Mike Boyle, what's the question? Ki Kaddish David Ritzbal Yaina Kaddish. Are you asking me that he was only Makadish, like the top layer of the ground? Or is it that he sanctified all the way down to the core of the earth? So Boile Kol Hazar Kula. So says Rashi, why don't you say that? What if the whole Azara, right? Shanatlo Ritzba Shalal. Let's say the whole floor was taken off. So Oilam Shitale the Ad Aret Tahay Makadish. The truth is that there's no question that when David was Makadish, he wasn't just Makadish the surface, but all the way down to the ground, all the way down to the depths. So then what's the kasha? So what? You're standing in the crevice where it's still Kaddish. So in this, it's in Boy the Livshita, says Rashi, Mihavi Arich Ara, is this the normal way to potentially do avodah because you're like sitting in the crevice, which is not really where it was the avodah is typically done. Okay, question 3. Now let's say the word properly. Nidaldala Evan v'amad hakayin aleha him avodas kshera. So ein daitel chabra chaitzi. If you're not going to fix it, it's definitely a chatzitza. But if you're going to fix it, that's in the boy delif shita. And then 3b nekra ritzbas kol hazara. The whole hazara was ripped up. The amad hakayin avodim im kaima him avodas kshera. So we say the avodah is definitely kosher. V'shaminin la midaloi boilo Rebbe Lezer ella benekra even achas will kol hazara. Right, that's the diuk. That's only the reason why we're talking about this little crevice is coming to make a diuk that, however, when it comes to the hazara, the whole thing was like ripped off and it's like on the same level. Just now it's like a few inches lower. There's no shaila that is allowed. Question TA4. Boy Rami Ama Nekra Evan V'Abin Min Kaim Mahu Maim Study Hasafik Bahava Mina Maskana. So in the Havamina, we want to know was David actually Mekadosh only on the floor but not below it? When we say no, we certainly know that he was Mekadosh all the way to Haim. The Maskana, whether we say Derech Shirus B'Kach. Okay, let's keep on moving. Let's see the next piece of Gemara. So the Gemara says like this. Kibel b'smoil pasol Rav Shimon Machshir. So this is the very, very end of the Mishnah. And there's a machlokus if a Kohen does the avoda with his left hand. Of course, he's supposed to be doing his avoda with his right, stronger hand. But if he does with his left, it's a machlokus whether that pasol the whole avoda. Tanaban. So the pasuk says, and let's find this pasuk. V'lokach hakayin midam hachatos. So the kohen will take from the dam of the chatas be'etzba'i with his finger, v'nasan al karnos mizbach oila, and he'll take that dam and put it on the corners with his fingers, which will be the zrika. There's damo yishba'ich yisoid mizbach oila, and he will do the shvichas adam. He'll do the sprinkling of the blood by the yisoid of the mizbeach. So there's two mentionings over here. It says v'lokach, he takes it. And it also says v'nasan, and he puts it there. So what do we learn out from here? So says the Gemara, Tanaban, be'etzba v'lakach malamish shotei kabbalah ela b'yamin. When it says v'lakach, when you take something, so that's like the Kabbalah Saddam, which was with the fingers, but it had to be with his right hand. Be'etzba, be'nosan, when it says word nosan, is mulam shlotehi nesina elo biyamin. When it comes to like the giving, which is like the zrikas dam, if you will, that has to also be with the right hand. Fine. So therefore, according to the Shita, both zrika and Kabbalah must be with the right hand. Fine. Okay. Rav Shimon, and Rashi says, because whenever it says the word etzba, his finger is referring to his right. Okay. So Rav Shimon, v'chi nemer yad b'Kabbalah, it doesn't say the word hand, el be'etzba oy v'nasan, shotei nesina el b'yamin. So what do we say? When it comes to the fingers, it says that it should be with the right. Hoya v'lo nemer yad b'Kabbalah. So let's go slow. So let's read the pasuk again. It says the lokachoin medam hachatas be'etzboi. So the lokicha is with the finger. V'nosan al kanas mizbeach oila. Okay. So it only mentions in that pasuk the finger, right? Also lokachoin medam hachatas be'etzbo. Fine. So that is the pasuk. So we say like this. V'chi nemer yad b'Kabbalah. It doesn't say the hand, the word hand, when it comes to b'mekabel the dam. It only ela be'etzba v'nasan. It says be'etzba v'nasan. So what do we learn out from there? Shlotehe nesina ela b'yamin. So in other words, he's saying that the word is actually going on the second part, which is that the zrika of the dam, that needs to be with your right hand. Hoyavul nemer yad b'Kabbalah, since it doesn't say yad by the Kabbalah, kibel b'small kosher. In other words, what he's saying is that the word be'etzboi v'nosan is actually, that word etzboi is going on the second part of the pasuk, but not the first part. And therefore, it's only telling you that it's a problem when you use your left hand for the zrika, but not for the Kabbalah. Okay. So that's a second opinion. So Rav Shimon nemer yad b'Kabbalah. So he says like this. So 1 second. I think I lost my place. All right, let's go back. So he says like this. Let's Omer Rav Shimon, v'chi nemer yad b'Kabbalah el be'etzba v'nasan. It says be'etzba v'nasan. So the word etzba is going on the zrika. Shlo tehe nesina el b'yamin. Hoya v'lo nemer yad b'Kabbalah kibel b'small kosher. Rav Shimon Marashach. So how do we understand the shita of Rav Shimon? Isli gzer shava. So if you want to make the gzer shava, that says Rashi delfin yad de kamitza, that we learned out when it comes to doing the kamitza, it has to be with the right hand for the mincha, and we learned out mimitzaira, as Rashi says the ksiv be al boihin yado hayimanis. When it comes to mitzaira, you definitely put the dam on the right hand, the right earlobe, the right toe. So av kol makam shenemer yad enu el yamin. So there's a gezer shava. Again, when it comes to mitzaira, we know for sure it has to be with the right. So we went out. So too, when it comes to the kamitza, it has to be with the right. So because anytime it says the word yad, it means with the right hand. So that would be gzer shava. So if you want to add the gzer, if you in fact he does want the gzer shava, kilo nemer yad b'Kabbalah my havi. What's the difference if it doesn't say the word yad? Nonetheless, it does say the word etzba'oi, and you should be able to learn etzba from over there, because by the Mitzvah, it also says v'tava hakoyin es etzba hayimanis, that he uses his right finger. So again, if you're learning gzer shava, so that etzba should also come to include the words before it as well. Okay, so that's if you look at it in that regard. Fine, so that's the mona shachis l'gzer shava kilo nemer yad b'Kabbalah ma'yahav. If he lays l'gzer shava, if he doesn't learn out from Mitzvah, so kilo nemer yad b'Kabbalah ma'yahavi. What's the difference? Even if it did say yad, how do we know that's referring to the right hand? You only know the right hand from Mitzvah. But from Mitzayr, which is the right, so to Kamitza, and everything else is with the right. So Mamanashach, why do you make this distinction? So if he doesn't hold the Gzer Shava, then why does he ever require the right hand? The Hachikamer. The Chinemer Yad Yaminis B'Kabbalah. It doesn't say Yad Yaminis with regard to Mimakabbal the Dam, or the accepting of the blood. Hoyel V'lo Nemer Yad Yamin B'Kabbalah. Since it doesn't say that, Kibbah B'Smol Kosher. That's the reason why if you do Kabbalah with the left hand, it is kosher. Okay. So Amali Rabba Ihachi Afil Nesina Nami. Understand, if you're saying that it's kosher for the Kabbalah, then it should be Kabbalah also the Nesina, the Zrikas Adam. The Oid furthermore, Rabbi Shimon Gzer Shava. Is it true that he doesn't hold the Gzer Shava? I'll show you that he does. We're saying Rabbi Shimon Oimer Kol Makam Shnemer Yad. Anytime it says the word Yad, Eno El Yamin. It's the right. Etzma Eno El Yamin. Whenever it says Etzma, it's also only the right. So we see clearly that he does hold the Gzer Shava. Elo Oimer Rava Loyam Isla Gzer Shava. He really does hold the Gzer Shava. So in second, so if he holds the Gzer Shava, now within the Mamanashach, we said if he does hold the Gzer Shava, then we should always say it's a problem. So V'Hachikamer. V'Chinemer Yad B'Kabbalah Hoyavul Nemer Yad B'Kabbalah Elo Etzma. It only says the word Etzma. V'Chi Yeshel Kabbalah B'Etzma. How can you do Kabbalah with the Etzma? Kibbah B'Smol Kosher. Says Rashi. The Yeshel, you can't physically do Kabbalah of a Kli with just a finger. So obviously we're talking about with accepting the blood, but if we're talking about the blood, you can't use one finger for a Kli, right? To hold a Kli. So therefore, it must be, the fact that it says Etzma doesn't mean anything when it comes to the Kabbalah Saddam with the Kli Sharis, and therefore because of that, it can be even with the left hand. Amalei Rav Sama Bered de Rav Ashul Ravina, so Efsher de Avid Le Oizen L'Svas Mizrak Makababa. It's possible that you can make a handle at the very edge, and you could still hold it with just one finger. How do you mean you can't do it? Or you could hold a nice cup with just like one finger, like that maybe, right? And so what do you mean you can't do it? If you have the right handle, you can almost do anything. El Omer Bayim, as we continue to Chavdal and Beis, this is actually how it's interpreted. I actually already said the maskana too fast. The whole machlokus is whether or not the word etzba does it come to teach us the end of the pasuk, which is what he learns, but not lefanav, and therefore it's only coming to tell you that everything that's below it, which is the Kabbalah Saddam, but the Zrika Saddam is allowed with the left hand. Okay, Omer Abai, Had Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon Mafka Medavua U Mafka Medishmuel. This actually came from them. The sign went like this: Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon Omer Kol Makam Shnemer Etzba. Anytime it says the word Etzba B'Kabbalah, when it comes to the accepting of the dam, Shina B'Kabbalah Pasul. So therefore, if you do anything to deviate from that which you're supposed to do, it's pasul. B'Nesina kosher. However, when it comes to the giving of the sprinkle of the blood, then it's kosher. So what does that mean? It says Rashi. So kol makam shnemer etzba b'kabal v'lo b'Nesina kagayin haikra del el der belezer Reb Shimon darish etzba lokach dahainu lefan v'loi anoising. So he's actually learning the opposite. He learns that the word etzba is going for the word before it, which is talking about the accepting the blood, which is the Kabbalah, has to be with the right hand, not with the left. But the word doesn't